Hey, Rick Bozich, Sherritt Crawford from WDRB. For what? This is a show with no name. We're going to have to have a contest, have it named. We're the sports page when we're on the news segment. This is over the top and online and web, and we just want to sit down and talk a little football because we are right here on the cusp of the new football season. We've already got one game in the books, Western Kentucky last week. This week we're going to talk about a lot of games. We've got Louisville opening against Syracuse. We've got Kentucky opening against Miami. We got Indiana opening before those two on a Friday night against Illinois at home, and Western Kentucky is all the way out in Hawaii, and neither of us, you can see, is on that road trip.
And they're favored, I think like 14 or 16 points. That's the amazing thing with the 1-0 record. I think this is a fascinating college football season, one of the more interesting ones we've had here in a number of years. With Louisville, there's a wide range of expectations of what they can achieve. I've heard a national voice like David Hale of ESPN saying they could be his surprise sleeper team in the country. With Kentucky, you got people like Chris Doering of the SEC Network and Desmond Howard of ESPN Game Day talking about them. You got Will Levis on the fringe of the conversation for the Heisman Trophy. For Indiana, after their monumental fall last year where they went from 6-2 to 2-10, you got people wondering if they can win a Big Ten game. You got other people saying that they will bounce back with all the different new personnel. And then at Western Kentucky, they lost the great Bailey Zappi, but they came out firing in the first game against Austin Peay. Plus, we're also going to talk a few of the big national games this week, which will also include Thursday night when Jeff Brom has a really good game, which will be on WDRB, of the Purdue Boilermakers at home against Penn State.
That's right. So plenty of football, plenty to talk about. Where do you want to start? Do we go in chronological order here? Do we start with a Thursday night game with Brom and Penn State?
Sure, we can do that.
I mean, you know, Jeff is really good in these games, these high-profile games against ranked teams where you don't know what to expect of them. Certainly we're not sure what to expect even of Penn State coming into this season. What do you think Jeff does?
I think he wins because I think he does a really good job in these preparation games, and this is the ultimate preparation game. You've had the whole off season to prepare for it. Purdue does have some obstacles to overcome. They lost their best offensive weapon in David Bell to the NFL. They lost their best defensive player, George Karlaftis, who's been really good for the Kansas City Chiefs in the preseason, but he has a big-time quarterback, probably the second best one in the Big Ten, in Aiden O'Connell. And there's a lot of pressure on Penn State in this game. Let's remember last year, James Franklin parlayed some of these openings at LSU and USC into a really juicy contract at Penn State and didn't deliver a very good season. And Penn State fans are also going, that Will Levis guy at Kentucky, didn't he used to play here? He's better than Sean Clifford. James Franklin loses that game to Purdue to start the season. Penn State fans are going to be very upset.
Yes, and it's not pretty when Penn State fans are upset. Speaking of upset fans, you're going to be in Bloomington a night later on Friday night. And how big is this opener for Indiana? They've got Illinois coming in. Illinois has got a game under their belt. And that's an impressive game. And that's an advantage and an impressive game, so they're feeling good. I think that impacted a lot. You look at our picks at WDRB.com. We all are picking against the spread in this game, and we all picked that game, which means we feel pretty good about what we think. That having that game under their belt is an impact. But Indiana's so many unknowns. I mean, and they could be good unknowns as well as bad unknowns. Is the thing.
Yeah, Indiana is impossible to forecast because they have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new defensive coordinator. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but we're pretty sure it'll be Connor Bazelak, who comes from Missouri, where he started for 2 years. They've got to get better quarterback play than they got last year because last year they had some of the worst quarterback play in the country, Eric. They averaged 11 points a game, 11 points a game in Big Ten games. No wonder they didn't win any of them. I mean, you can't do that. They got new running backs. They got new receivers. They got new tight end, new defensive linemen, new linebackers. What they don't have is enough meat on both sides of the ball to control the line of scrimmage. It's a huge game. If they win that game against Illinois, then you get some of the fans back on their side. If they lose that game against Illinois, which is one of the worst teams from the Big Ten West, at home, you have people looking at the schedule saying, where are they going to win a Big Ten game this year?
Yeah, it's a tough deal. And the problem with the Big Ten is that, Indiana's trying to climb the ladder, and the Big Ten goes out and adds a couple of teams in the future that are already up above you on the ladder. So you just get further and further down, and it gets tough. Now, there is a nice check at the end of the year, and maybe you can start to use that to build on something, but it's important for Tom Allen, if he's going to be the guy to build it, to win games like this. They got to win every game that they're capable of winning. That means beating Illinois. It means beating Idaho. It means beating Western Kentucky in week 3, and Western Kentucky may have a head of steam in that third game.
Yeah, they'll be 2-0.
It'll be their third game, be Indiana's second. So they got a week to get ready, which is another advantage for them. So you're talking about Indiana was the bottom of the Big Ten in total offense a year ago. They were the bottom of the Big Ten in scoring defense, and so you better bring in a lot of new people to lead it. Whether some of these players come back, whether transfer portal, I mean, it's tough. The better the league is, the tougher it is to find these impact transfer portal guys, because everybody's good, everybody's got skill, everybody's got guys with those stars by their names. So we'll see if anybody Indiana is bringing in is going to challenge anybody from Michigan or anywhere like that, right. Ohio State. That's a tough thing for them.
Yeah, I think they're going to be contributing players. What we need to see if they're impact players or playmakers. The big thing about Indiana, and we'll move on, is in 2020 they had a magical year because they ranked near the top of the country in turnover margin. Last year they ranked next to last in the country of turnover margin. If they can just get it back to the middle, they'll have a chance to do a little bit better. But you can't have an offense that only scores 11 points a game and rank next to last in the country in turnover margin and expect anything to happen other than what did happen last year, which is go 2-10.
Yeah, and I think a guy like Phil Steele, whose magazine we have here right between us, not an official show sponsor, but
not yet.
But we use him. He will look at it. He will look at that, and if your turnover margin was bad one year, he almost assumes it's going to be better the next year. It's not always a safe assumption to make, but it's amazing how much that pans out. So on the upside, if Indiana can limit its own turnovers, and that you control, if they can be more opportunistic on defense and get and turn some teams over a little bit more, it can make a big difference in your record. And I don't think any of us are expecting Indiana to come out and win 7 games this year, but
no.
if they win 5, I think
I picked 4. You picked 5.
I picked 5. If they win 5, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I picked 4, and everybody says that's horrible. That's double what they won last year.
Yeah.
And here's another thing that's going to happen. Out of the corner of your eye, everybody's going to be looking up in Seattle, Washington, and watching to see what Michael Penix does as the starting quarterback with the Washington Huskies, because last year when he played at Indiana, he was injured, but he was not very good. He turned the ball over a lot. And I think Bazelak will be better this year than Penix was last year.
Yeah, well, he needs to be. I mean, that's a simple statement. So, Indiana, you picked them 4 wins.
4 and 8.
I picked them 5 wins. We'll see how that all pans out. Starting on Friday night, you'll be there. Griffin Gonzalez will be there, and you'll be reporting on what could be a big Indiana victory, could be the beginning of basketball.
And they got a microbrewery up there this year.
They need it.
They
need it. That's right.
Upland Brewery is the sponsor.
Take whatever you can get. Hey, that's good stuff too. Let's move to Louisville, who is next on. Kentucky will kick off a little bit before Louisville.
Right.
Louisville's kickoff's at 8:00. We'll take Louisville here right now, and again, a lot of optimism, but nobody knows exactly how much optimism to have. I think Louisville could be better. They've got a tough schedule. They should have a better record. They've got some transfer portal pieces that are interesting. They got a couple positions where you want to wait and see, but you think they're better. They're a tough team to pick in terms of number of wins.
Yeah, I mean, the vibe, the hype coming out of Louisville in the preseason camp has all been positive. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of confidence and faith in Malik Cunningham, which there should be. He's, a fifth-year senior?
Yeah.
He's played as a starter now for, more than 3 full years?
Yeah, he's playing his 5th game against Syracuse.
It's crazy. I mean, he's been through everything he can be through. Last year, he made a major step forward because he did something that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. He cut down on turnovers. A lot of talk about Tyan Evans, the running back who comes in from Tennessee. I've had people. I talked to a Tennessee fan in a coffee shop last week. He said that dude's good. Tennessee fans were not happy when he left. Because when he did play last year before, I think he got injured and somebody took his job, he was really good. Yeah. The receivers, I know they got a receiver coming in from the FCS level who's highly touted. Marshawn Ford is a proven player. The offensive line is a strength. They got some bulls on that offensive line. led by Caleb Chandler, as we all know. Defensively, they're going to have to get better. It's been a slow progression since Brian Brown's been here on defense, but Louisville fans want even more because they all remember back to the days of, Calvin Pryor and Marcus Smith and all those dudes when Charlie Strong was here, Preston Brown, who's now going to be on the Louisville radio team, of how good those Louisville defenses were. So I like the direction of the team. I think Satterfield has done a very good job of turning the vibe around. I haven't decided. We haven't filed our picks yet for that. I'm in the 7 or 8 range. Which way are you going to push me?
I'm in the 7 range, although it could go to 8 especially if you get off to a good start. I think I like Tyan Evans. Of course, he got not beat out, but he got replaced when he had an injury at Tennessee. Before that, he was really good. He was very good. He put out some good games, and he's not just a runner. He can block. He's a really good receiver out of the backfield, and he's the kind of guy that if you pair with Malik Cunningham, can cause some real problems. If Cunningham is on his game on that read option with a running back like that who is patient and can hit holes and can do something with it when he's in the open field, that's a dangerous combination. And that takes a lot of pressure off the receivers if he turns out to be a big-time player. Louisville's got a good offensive line, I think. Defensively, I think they need to go out and get somebody in the secondary to help create turnovers, and they did that. Quincy Riley from Middle Tennessee was number 2 in the nation in interceptions last year and has proven, at least in practice so far in the preseason, according to Scott Satterfield, he's a ball hawk. He had 2 interceptions in 1 scrimmage. So that's a good thing if he's got a nose for the ball. He was a receiver in high school. He's got good ball skills, so that could help. They also went out and got a cornerback from Florida State. They're good at the safety spot with some experience. So now they're no longer a young team back there. They're experienced at linebacker. If Monty Montgomery stays healthy, I think they probably get to a bowl last season. I think he was that important to that team. And then they bring in a Momo Sanogo, who's another one of these 6th-year guys. He was a really good linebacker at Ole Miss. Got hurt, did never play the same amount again. If he can come back, he's already given them leadership. If he can provide something for them in that secondary defensively, then that'll help them out a lot. So all that looks good, and there's a lot of experience. There's not a lot of depth, but more than there has been. So what's the downside? You go on the road to Central Florida in your second game. That could be a tough one to win. If you stumble in either of those first 2 games, what's the third game like on a Friday night against Florida State? Louisville needs to take care of business early in the season because the end of the season is going to be difficult. Again, you got Kentucky at the end of the year, you have NC State at the end of the year, you got Clemson lurking down there, so it gets a lot tougher as things go on. 4 of the first 6, the first 2 and 4 of the first 6 on the road. Yeah. We'll find out. Really, in the first 3 weeks, I think we'll find out how good Louisville's going to be. A Syracuse game is interesting to me from this standpoint. This is a team they've dominated 3 years in a row, especially the last 2 years. They beat them 71-3. I know this year the game's at Syracuse instead of at Louisville. I know it's the opening game instead of like the 7th, 8th, 9th game. I know that Syracuse has a whole different offensive scheme with a new coordinator and a new quarterbacks coach. But Louisville's only favored by 4.5 when they've crushed this team the last couple of years. I guess that's because of first game uncertainties, but they need to go up there and win that game and win it pretty decisively. Then you go to Central Florida, then you come home. If you can come home 2-0 against Florida State, I think they'll get all the fans back on their side and could be positioned to be one of the surprise teams in the country. Yeah, it's been such a weird offseason for Scott Satterfield because first off, his job's on the line. Everybody's down on him. And then they start signing players, and now everybody likes him, and he's back. He's popular. We love you again, Scott. He was asked about this when he had his first game week press conference. Our buddy Russ Brown asked him, what's it like being a guy on the hot seat? He didn't care much for the term hot seat, but he did talk a little bit about the urgency of this season.
Well, to me, I think every year is a crucial year. It doesn't matter. You got to go win in this business. There's nobody wants to be average. Nobody wants to be below average. You have to go win football games, and we all know that. We feel like we're headed in the right direction and have been heading in the right direction since we've been here. We've had a lot of tough things thrown our way over the last 3 years, but we've weathered the storm. We continue to fight, continue to battle, and I approach every year that way. Nothing changes for me and our staff and how we approach it. It's been a great off season, so we'll go out there and hopefully put a great product on the field and go win some games.
How much of a make or break season is this for Satterfield, do you think?
I mean, I think he's got to win at least 6. I think the recruiting class is a big chip in his corner. I think it'll be hesitancy to move on, unless if he has another losing season, that's 3 in a row.
Yeah.
So, but it depends on how it breaks down, who they beat, how they play. But I don't think that'll happen. I think they're going to win at least 7, and I think then he's going to buy himself some more time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as you kind of
Yeah.
hinted at, what if he goes 9-3? Then he'll be somebody who's in demand.
He'll be set. Yeah. Does he go somewhere? Is he in the Big Ten next season? And how does that work? So, speaking of a guy in demand and who's done a terrific job at the University of Kentucky, let's wrap it up with talking as far as these teams about Mark Stoops and what he's done at Kentucky. A little bit of uncertainty with Kentucky. Chris Rodriguez, the All-American running back, will not play in the opener against Miami. We're not really sure why, other than he had a DUI in the offseason. Maybe there's some other issues. Some other guys may be missing. We don't know for how long. I don't know how much of that's a distraction or not, because we just know so very little about that situation, and they haven't said anything about it. Kentucky's a big favorite against Miami, and I don't think that changes regardless of where you play the personnel. I just don't know that that's a game I feel safe in playing, because Kentucky early in the season has not been great in any of these seasons. The first game has always been iffy for them. So that's a question mark. And then having these other issues. And Miami, while they shouldn't challenge Kentucky, is better probably than some of the teams that Kentucky's opened with in the past.
Well, what makes Miami dangerous is 2 things. One is they got a veteran quarterback in Gabbert, who threw for over 2,600 yards last year and doesn't throw very many interceptions. And secondly, the overall arc of the team. Miami used to be a really good team 20, 30 years ago. Then they kind of have fallen off. Last year they bounced back to 7-6, won their bowl game, and they are the pick to win the East Division of the Mid-American Conference. They don't have the athletes that Kentucky has. They don't have the team speed that Kentucky has. But first game, you don't know how it's going to break down. Kentucky, I think, is favored by 16.5. I think it'll be a closer game than that. And you wonder if Kentucky, part of them, it's human nature. People are already saying, they play in week 2. That's Florida.
Yeah.
That's a big game. So it's like they can't afford to look past Miami of Ohio, even though Florida will be a defining game in their season, because if you really are going to be a contender in the SEC East, you got to win that game.
Yeah, I've covered some Miami-Louisville games that weren't so pretty. If you'll remember Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I was at one too, down in Mobile.
Yeah, the GMAC Bowl down there, that was big. I like Kentucky's personnel. I think, their line isn't as dominant a looking group as they've had in the past several years, but Will Levis, if he stays healthy, should be an impact player in the SEC. The receiver position is where I have the biggest question at Kentucky, because if you look at that comeback against Penn State, it's just Will Levis throwing to Wan'Dale Robinson. That's it. He just went to Wan'Dale wisely, I might add, and started to move the ball down the field, and Wan'Dale just made game-winning play after game-winning play, and he was that kind of guy for them. Who's going to be that guy this year? You don't even have a Josh Ali, who was a guy they relied on a lot too at the wide receiver spot. So they have talent there. I don't think that, but we just need to see that talent prove itself. Defensively, I don't know if they have like the big star, the marquee name, the guy that maybe we've seen the last few years, but they're solid. Mark Stoops is a defensive coach. He keeps recruiting good defensive players. They coach them up. This is the advantage of not having taken a shortcut to anything that Kentucky's done over the last several years, that when you lose guys, you've got guys right behind them that are pretty talented. So I feel good about Kentucky. We haven't done our picks for them yet either, but I'm in the 9 win range and maybe 10. I don't see them going through a season without having one of those games where they stub their toe and lose to somebody they shouldn't, and I don't see them beating Georgia, but maybe they have fewer of those games. There have been better, more talented Kentucky teams than this one, but this one has an advantageous schedule.
Yeah, yes, they do. 8 home games, all 4 non-conference games at home, although their first 2 SEC games are on the road, at Florida and at Ole Miss. The defining games are going to be Florida, at Ole Miss, and South Carolina at home. South Carolina has been a team Kentucky has beaten in the last, 4 years, I think? I think they had a nice winning streak against them. But Shane Beamer has come in there and revitalized South Carolina football, and I think South Carolina thinks they can come in and beat Kentucky this year. and that's a game you gotta win those games against those teams in your side of the division to maintain your place as the second best team in the SEC, which East as they were last year. And Tennessee, Florida, and South Carolina aren't comfortable letting Kentucky have that spot.
Yeah. So it should be a fun year for Kentucky. I think they're picked to finish second in the SEC East. I think they've earned that as a program. That's a measure of respect from the other coaches in their league, but now you have to deliver on that. And the only problem, and this is true for Louisville too, and for all of them, but the injury at the quarterback spot is what you don't want to see, because there's not a lot of depth behind either of these quarterbacks.
Yeah,
their
backup quarterback left, right?
Kentucky lost its backup quarterback, and Louisville has named another one. So
it's Deuce Hogan, right? Is he the guy?
I haven't heard who it's the guy.
So. I think it's Deuce Hogan.
Kaya Sharon is my distant cousin, so.
I think it's Deuce
I have
Hogan.
a family rooting interest in Kentucky football backup quarterbacks now. So
okay.
I should not be expected to deliver objectivity where that goes. So that football is football. Then we have, and I want to get into this a little bit with you, and we can get into anything else you want to real quick. But the NCAA is considering on Wednesday a measure that's probably going to be proposed. The board of directors is thinking about it, about doing away with the IARP, revamping its enforcement process, ending postseason bans. None of this will happen in time to help the University of Louisville, mind you. But it could, if something's in place that we're not going to ban teams from postseason anymore. Maybe the current IARP says, well, let's not ban these guys. But I don't think so. But what do you make of all this? This is a pretty radical look at reform. It's led by Greg Sankey of the SEC. This is obviously what the big-time programs seem to want. No rules, just right. What do you think?
Whew, that's a lot to process in one thing. It's an obvious admission by the NCAA that they can't enforce the rules, that the rules are sort of out of date, and they're just trying to survive at this point, and I'm not sure that they really will. The IARP has only been around for what, 4 or 5 years at the most. It's
not even that.
One case.
Yeah.
One case to this point. I mean, that's a failure, and that came after the 2017 play for pay scandal, when there was a big push for reform, and they were going to try and speed up the adjudication process, and all they've done is slow it down. It's an admission of defeat, and I think it kind of heralds, and along with NIL, an anything goes situation in college sports. If you're not going to have postseason bans, what are you going to have? Fines? I don't know. No punishment at all?
I mean, they've said that they want, they want schools to come to mutually agreed upon sanctions. Well, nobody's going to agree on any sanction. That's kind of what we've learned here over the past few years, is you don't want to, you don't agree to anything. I mean, you ban yourself in the postseason, you're just hurting yourself because there's another ban coming. So
what's going to happen to Mike Glazer and Chuck Smirt? How are they going to be?
They're got to be the guys that are really worried, but they're making a lot of money right now, so maybe they'll make it last. They'll still come up with some way.
My classmates.
Yeah, they'll come up with some way to figure this out. So that is something that bears watching, especially if you're a Louisville fan, as we move forward on this, and we'll see how the future of NCAA.
Let's tout one other thing. Starting on Thursday, and every Thursday during the college football season, Griffin Gonzalez, Tom Lane, John Lewis, Eric, and myself, I've given them all $1,000 in imaginary money.
Imaginary money.
We're all going to pick 3 games against the spread. You can pick it straight up, money line. You can pick a parlay. And we're going to keep track of how everybody does. I'm going to keep track of the bankroll. You better look over my shoulder to make sure I do it right. But we're all going to have fun picking 3 games and see how we can do picking the games. I know that you have to go across the border to Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Tennessee, or West Virginia to bet, but it is going on in the rest of the country. I think people will enjoy doing it. Betting is here in college sports, and we're going to have fun with it at WDRB.com. And when the season's over, the winner needs to get something, right? The rest of us needs to buy them lunch or dinner or something.
We'll buy them an imaginary lunch with our imaginary winnings or losings. Who's going to be the first to crap out? That's going to be it. It's going to be like
Griffin went big on he did a parlay.
He went all in, yeah. No, I don't know. No, I don't think anybody went all in.
He's from Indiana. He's used to gambling.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, who will be the first to come in and slap the money down and say, I'm out. That's it. That's what's going to happen.
After Kramer?
We will be doing more of these throughout the year. We'll be doing them on after games in a lot of different ways, so you'll get used to where to look for us. We will certainly on our social media share where these things are so you can take a look at them, follow us this way. Just one of the many ways that you can follow us here at WDRB.
All right.
One in the books. Thanks, Rick.
We got one in the books, and thanks for watching,
Yeah.
and we'll be back. And plenty of college football to talk about after the results are in.